A warm welcome to our listeners today. We know you're busy. We really appreciate you spending part of your morning or afternoon with us. We have a great program today. We're going to be looking at how you can turbocharge your current ITSM or ESM solution. Our featured speaker today is Charles Betz with Forrester. It's probably a name many of you know. He is a widely recognized thought leader in ITSM and one of the primary visionaries driving this remarkable evolution we're seeing today of ESM, Enterprise Service Management. We're looking forward to getting Charlie's insights on our topic today and exploring in some more depth the key elements of the employee experience and automation, which are a couple of examples of things Charlie will be looking at. I'm Kevin Smith with Bright Pattern, and we are pleased to partner with Forrester to bring you today's webinar. And I'll have a few additional comments following Charlie's presentations. Just a reminder that today's program will be recorded, and we'll be sending that recording out to everyone later this week. And we'll also take some questions at the end of the webinar. You can send those in through the Q&A feature of the Zoom. In 2020, if you weren't familiar with Zoom before, we all know it very well now, because that's just part of our daily life. So that should do it for the introductions. So we'll turn it over to Charlie to get started.
And thank you, Kevin. And it's a real pleasure and honor to be here with Bright Pattern today, talking about enterprise service management, a topic absolutely near and dear to my heart. And we're going to talk about the broad context surrounding ESM and take couple deep dives into various aspects of how you actually move ahead with it. And hopefully this will be of interest to all of you. So just to kind of set the stage, 2020 has been quite a year and it's not over yet. I've been using the term VUCA, which is an acronym that comes from warfighting and war planning in the Pentagon to characterize the battle space. Absolutely, we see that it's not a predictable world. If it ever was, it's certainly gotten even less predictable. And the situations that many companies are faced with are endlessly surprising and certainly don't lend themselves well to your typical 5-year plan. In fact, that's the joke I make. That's the thudding sound we heard around the world in about April of this year as 10 million 5-year plans were promptly recycled. And what do we have instead? Well, we have a workforce, hundreds of millions, maybe 1 billion people impacted now, working in very different circumstances than they were. And we're still dealing with the shockwaves from this huge transition, which definitely has been impressive how well so many companies have adapted and have been able to support their employees, how the internet itself actually didn't fall over under the weight. Hopefully we will be seeing a trend back towards the office, at least for some employees, although many are saying that, you know, the world has changed and there's a lot of people who are just going to remain working from home, which I'm sure makes the dogs happy, if you notice the player at the bottom right there. And it has not gone necessarily smoothly, though, in terms of day-to-day operations. We certainly were hearing some disruptions as call centers were emptied out and people went home to work with more challenged connections and equipment, perhaps. There's been a lot of difficulties that have been kind of wrung out of the information supply chain, you could call it. And I think it's a question that still bears asking. Have you gone dark on your customers? And those remote workers that we see, are they operating blindfolded? They used to be able to walk down to the 4th floor and talk to the receptionist at the Human Resources Department. They can't do that anymore. Well, how do they find the services, the approvals, the resources that they need to serve your customers? I think that this is a question we all need to be asking, especially in the given the current situation where organizations are finding they need to pivot. They need to discover new ways, innovative ways of delighting their customer. And who are these remote workers at home? Well, for the most part, they are knowledge workers. The industry, the global economy started transitioning in the middle of the last century to knowledge work. It was observed by great thinkers like Peter Drucker and Daniel Bell. The knowledge worker is the engine of today's economy. Knowledge work drives so much else. And what does the knowledge worker need? What is the knowledge worker required? Well, it is different from the classic manual laborer in the factory. The knowledge worker requires autonomy. They require an environment where it's understood they are continuously learning. I've chosen an image here of a young woman looking out over a valley, and she's prepared, she's provisioned. She is going to try to cross that valley, but she is going to be faced with unknown unknowns. We cannot take every step for her. We do not know where her path is going to lead exactly. There can be a high-level objective, a high-level mission of get across the valley, but step by step she will be faced with unknown unknowns, and she will be responsible for managing her own feedback loops as she discovers on the ground what we could not know when we defined the mission and sent her off in the first place. And this is why the operating models of IT and digital organizations around the world are changing. They are moving towards a product model, from project to product, by my friend Mick Kirsten. Very, very good book. And he nailed it. It's gotten a lot of attention because this is absolutely what we're seeing, that project management offices are in steep decline. I talk to companies week after week that have sunset their PMOs or pivoted them to value realization offices, product management offices, portfolio management offices. And there's real business reasons for doing this. Product teams are correlated with faster release frequencies, and if they provide their own support for their services, this is correlated with exceeding expectations for business objectives. This is research that I led this year myself. Did a big survey, we ran a lot of correlations, and we definitely found a lot of support for Agile and DevOps and product team transformation. But what does, again, the knowledge worker need? What do these product teams need from you and your enterprise if you're supporting them? They need to have the resources that they require so that they can enter into a state of flow. They should be satisfied in their daily jobs because this leads directly to improved customer satisfaction. This is a rhetorical question here. Forrester and many other companies have researched this question. Is there a link between happiness at work, customer experience, sustained financial performance? The answer is absolutely yes. We see lower turnover, we see higher profit. This is understood, for example, by the well-known CEO of Southwest Airlines, who understood very well that if the employees come first, they treat the customer well, which keeps the customer coming back, which pleases the shareholders. It's not a great mystery. It's just the way it works, as he put it in this very articulate quote. But what does the knowledge worker want? What makes them happy? Is it more money? Is it beer? Is it foosball tables, rock walls? No, it is a sense of flow. It is a feeling of having some purpose and some intrinsic motivation. Flow is the highest state of human performance. We see much greater productivity when people, especially knowledge workers, are in a sense of flow, a sense that they have the resources they need readily at hand to get the job done. This is what builds intrinsic motivation, and these all-important orientations, these all-important values of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is what motivates the knowledge worker. This is what demotivates the knowledge worker. When you have fragmentation, you have multitasking, you have broken flow, you have processes requiring approvals. I'll get back to you next week sometime, and you can't continue working on what it is you were working on. And so often this is driven by technology and just simple plumbing even of being able to find who it is you need to talk to. Exacerbated, as I mentioned now, with the rise of home working. This is absolutely an opportunity for everybody to think about their ESM strategy in terms of employee experience and employee satisfaction. Is this your knowledge worker? Constantly on the search for information and well-known facts about who owns what and who to talk to. How do I get provisioned? How do I file an expense report? How do I file an HR requisition? Ultimately, this is the ideal we want, is all resources handy, no distractions, and that we are constantly, or as much as humanly possible, in this flow zone where we have the information, resources, and approvals we need. And when we are in this flow zone, we are then ideally suited to participate in this great transformative movement called DevOps. DevOps is not just a technical pattern. DevOps absolutely is a new way of working based strongly on agile principles, which again emphasize that teams should have the resources they need to get the work done without a lot of interruptions and waiting. And when you have this operating effectively, it provides a continuous platform for not just IT, but marketing and R&D, product management generally, to partner with IT, sales and service and operations in this continuously iterating feedback loop of product discovery, definition, construction, test release, delivery, operations, then feeding immediately back into that R&D process. This is the DevOps ideal, and absolutely enterprise service management has a lot to contribute to it. Now, I want to say there has been a lot of discussion around that ITIL and DevOps are fundamentally incompatible. And I will point out and admit that around the issue of process, and in particular processes like change management, DevOps challenged IT service management in important ways. And those challenges need to be heeded. But IT, and now enterprise service management, was never reducible just to change management. That's just one process. And I have yet to hear any DevOps teams complain about being able to readily access the platform services they need to support their daily job, their daily inquiries, because we are in a world of highly scaled and complex digital systems. A given product team in a large enterprise cannot do it all. They need the support of enterprise shared services. These shared services should be highly automated. They absolutely need to be available in as frictionless a way as possible, but ultimately, everybody needs to know where to file an expense report, how to get an HR requisition through, how to request facilities, assuming we ever wind up back in corporate campuses, and security consultations, it's so on and so forth. And of course, the all-important platforms. You know, what is the appropriate cloud provider and what are the appropriate design patterns? Sure, there are 900 services available or more on my cloud hyperscaler, but which of those should I use? And how can I effectively sign up for them and have integrated billing with the company rather than pulling out my own credit card? All of these problems need to be solved, and this is why enterprise service management is absolutely critical to the DevOps vision. And also notice that increasingly all of those green boxes on the bottom, they themselves are taking a leaf from the DevOps playbook and themselves running as product teams. Everybody becomes a product team, whether your value proposition is external facing or internal facing. And as Jeff Bezos insisted years ago, we ultimately build everything as if we might externalize it because we never know. And so this is the new value chain. This is the new operating model. Another view of it, we can look at it from the point of view of the service portfolio. I get calls every week on this. I think that there is still more to say about the service portfolio. I think that some of the guidance that's out there hasn't quite gotten it precisely right or in as detailed a way as is needed by the industry. And so I always am pointing out to people, you need to distinguish between your requestable services and your production services. Your production services, that's where it makes sense to talk about service level agreements, 5.9s and all the rest. And this is what goes in your CMDB, is your application and infrastructure services. And there doesn't need to be any assumption, by the way, that your services are IT services. They can be legal and facility services too, but for the most part, those are going to be your requestable services. You may have an HR system, a supply chain system, but how does somebody get access to it? That's the requestable aspect of that service, and it belongs in a different location in your overall service portfolio. It belongs in the service catalog, which sometimes gets confused and people put production services in the service catalog. I draw a very bright, shiny line, and as a Forrester analyst giving guidance on this every week, I say no. Your service catalog is your requestable services, and they may be supported by your production services, but they are not the same. Access to the HR system is not the same as the HR system. I have a delivery SLA. I will give you access in 48 hours on that, but it's a different thing than running that production infrastructure. And in some cases, I can't even offer a delivery SLA when you come to me and you say, I need a security consult, I need an architecture consult, I need a legal consult. I can say, I'll get back to you in 72 hours, but I have no idea what kind of problems you've gotten yourself into. And so I'm not going to put a delivery SLA and say, I will solve your problem in a week. That may not be possible. So all of these things need to be carefully understood in your ESM system. And hopefully this provides you with a little bit of clarity. As Forrester, we're always happy to talk further on this. I will note that, as I said before, the production services require a provisioning process. My bubbles are a little out of order here. And then finally, the big trend is that we are commoditizing and automating the professional services, where it used to be, to get a server, you need to talk to an infrastructure engineer, maybe have multiple conversations with an infrastructure engineer who's going to ask you all kinds of questions about your intended production environment. And that's how it was 10 years ago. That's why it took 6 months to get a server, is because of all of this due diligence. But in the day and age of cloud, no, there's an API. Throw your Terraform template at the API and up spins an Amazon or Azure or Google VM, and you're done, and you don't need to talk to infrastructure engineering. However, you may want to look at the templates they provide, and in fact, they may provide the guardrails that allows you to get that VM in the first place, but all automated, assuming you have a budget code, right? And so ultimately, I think that this is a great example of how we visualize a great service portal. The CERN service catalog, I use this frequently as an example. You will notice the list of services. IT services is one out of nearly 24. If you want somebody to show up in your particle physics lab with an oxyacetylene torch to work on some piece of high energy physics lab equipment, you order it through the portal. If you need to have a consultation about experimental protocols or regulatory affairs, you need legal consultation, it's all available in the portal. And this is the modern service-oriented organization. I use service-oriented somewhat advisedly. It has some technical connotations from years back, but I think it's also a great concept for the modern organization. And as we look at the enterprise service management customers, what do we see? Well, absolutely. We see that the customers we interviewed in the ESM wave, which I own, nearly 80% were doing ESM, that is at least one non-IT use case. Now, some of them were just doing little bits of non-IT. Some of them were doing more non-IT than IT. 70% non-IT workloads being run on what you might consider an IT service management platform. And the average of the customers who were doing ESM was that half of their workload was now non-IT. It's surprising to me that people will still say that enterprise service management is ivory tower or aspirational or it's vendor driven. I simply don't agree with that point of view. In my view, ESM has been customer led, and it has even surprised in some cases good ITSM vendors who, I remember some conversations, Charlie, they're using our tool for all kinds of things. What do we do with that? I say, it's an opportunity. You need to lean forward, lean into that opportunity. And for the most part, they are, which is why ESM is a successful market space. And it's not easy to help define a market space. And I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've been able to do this at Forrester in partnership with a lot of great vendors. So what are some of the use cases we see? I've referred to a few of these, so I'll go fairly quickly, but certainly human resources. Now, here's the key point. It's not that the ESM system becomes your system of record for human resources. The major ESM vendors have no desire to become Workday or SAP HR or PeopleSoft HR or any of those systems of record. There is not any market convergence or overlap that's going to happen there. I will emphasize this. However, how do you get your address changed? How do you get your name legally changed? Some of these things can't be self-service because of regulatory. And so you have to talk to an HR analyst. Well, the HR systems of record never enabled that. Now, probably today they're starting to wake up a little bit, but it used to be you would send an email to ignore my email at hr.mycompany.com. And then you're probably in a world of hurt. Or you had distributed workflow like Lotus Notes or GroupWise, SharePoint. Love SharePoint for certain things, but the distributed workflow idea didn't really pan out that well. And so we've seen a need for a lighter weight, but yet more centralized workflow capability. We've seen a real need for it because this is how you get in touch with that HR analyst, especially now that you can't walk down to 4th floor and talk to the HR receptionist anymore, right? Same thing with your lawyers. We are not going to see API-driven automation of approve my $30 million contract. That's not ever going to happen. You always need legal counsel if you are doing contracts, and absolutely you need to know how to find them and what information they need, and you need a structured way of interacting with counsel, and that's why so many ESM vendors are standing up legal case modules, because it was not a well-handled use case previously. Similarly with supply chain, you've got the contract enforced now, and you're issuing purchase orders. Maybe that's pretty automated, but where's my stuff? You have a million exceptions hitting all the time in the supply chain, especially with the COVID-19 disruptions. So I need to talk to that supply chain analyst in purchasing and run down where the heck that container is. Again, a classic ESM use case. The supply chain analyst, of course, is going to use SAP or Oracle, but how do I find them and talk to them? Consultation on supply chain problems is absolutely a service in the modern service enterprise. And so ultimately, we see a new kind of enterprise system that is growing, expanding. The market is expanding. We're absolutely seeing this. Where you have systems that they aggregate into the service portal, the service catalog along the top. We chose these icons carefully. This is a fan in, so hence the upside down trapezoid. Then you got some plumbing in the middle, identity entitlement, brokering, workflow. The workflow is important because this is actually how you can write actual non-trivial functionality without needing to actually, crack open Node.js or React or anything. You actually write it in these platforms because they are low-code, no-code platforms. And you have then the fan out along the bottom, which consists of 3 major types of systems. You have the systems that are big and heavy and need DevOps pipeline, things that your developers are writing in JavaScript, Java, Node.js, whatever. And then you have in yellow the workflows that can be automated entirely within the ESM system. And then you have the services, BPO and cloud, that you're brokering in. And so this becomes a unified portal for getting things done and providing resources. And of course, ultimately, we're seeing more and more interest and success with virtual agents, chatbots, and so on. We automate all of these things. And in fact, one trend we saw as we interviewed ESM customers was the standing up of small workflow and service definition factories. I talked to one company that was automating 400 workflows that were in shared email boxes in the remains of Lotus Notes and Novell GroupWise. And they put it all into one of the major ESM platforms. It is, I think, a relatively repeatable form of software development. Normally, I'm not a big fan of saying software development's repeatable, but some limited, some kind of specific case things like workflow development can be more repeatable. And we have seen effective small service workflow factories being stood up, especially when there's a lot of known workflows that just need to be replatformed and consolidated. And so ultimately, looking ahead, we see the rise of chatbots and chat ops. This is, I think, a super important topic, and I think we'll hear more from this, especially from my friend Kevin with Bright Pattern. What are we seeing with the chatbots? Well, we're seeing really interesting success. We're seeing increasing deflection being the term of, okay, we have a lot of calls coming into the service desk, and we would rather that some of them not get to the operator if they're really easy. So we provide people with natural language processing chatbots. Well, first of all, we provide self-service knowledge bases. And then we also encourage them to talk to the chatbot first. And it can be annoying. I realize this. I've been annoyed myself with chatbots, believe me. But we're seeing, as an industry trend, increasing success in deflection. We're hearing amazing stories, up to 80–90% deflection for especially domains where there's a lot of people calling with the same question. And so this is, I think, an exciting time to be looking at chatbots, exploring what they can do for you. There can definitely be costs. You need to look at the platform costs. You need to be looking at the level of services you may need. I'd be pretty cautious with the in-house development. We've heard some failure stories, significant failure stories. You've got a few bright developers. They really want to play with Microsoft Luis or TensorFlow. It ain't that easy. Believe me, it's not that easy. And we tend to guide people away from that conversation. Except in certain very specialized cases. I think at this point, it's more of a question of finding good partners on both the platforms and the services side. And then you will still have some things that you need to develop in-house, but then you start to really scope those down and focus on things like understanding your particular domains and ontologies in your organization. And so ultimately, in order to adapt with this to this new VUCA world, I believe that collecting your services into a common portal, including how you access them, gathering the employee sentiment about that ongoing access, i.e. through Net Promoter Score, starting your chatbot journey, are all great steps you can take to adapt to this increasingly volatile and surprising world and position your organization and yourself for further surprises and hopefully success in the years to come. And with that, I want to thank again Bright Pattern and turn this over to Kevin, who has a few words to say about their particular offerings and interests in this space. Kevin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. That was fantastic, by the way. I made a few notes. And one thing, just a quick comment. I think there are people that are still not recognizing the growth of ESM. And if I got it right, I think you said when you did your survey, 78% of the respondents said that they were doing ESM in some form.
These are people
So
with
this isn't a
already with
5% or 10% thing. This is,
sorry to interrupt.
yeah. So no, I was just a strike. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a few comments on how you advance the practice of ESM today, where an organization can be investing, what are some of the sensible next steps to be taking, that we can be taking. And the first thing I want to talk about is something that Charlie touched on, which is automation. It's really important that you don't wait to start investing in automation. And if you haven't started yet, that's okay. A lot of level of automation today in ITSM, I think ESM is probably a little bit higher, but in IT, for example, is 10 to 20%. But it's really important that we begin to make investments now, even if it's very simple. Even a very simple investment in automation can get you started, and to not wait. The tools have gotten really good. Charlie mentioned a number of those tools. And there's a standard. I wrote about this in one of my books, and working with some of the best organizations globally, you can see a strong trend in the very best ESM organizations, the very best ITSM organizations. They are investing aggressively in automation. And the standard we need to think about is getting to 90% automated in our primary processes by 2025. I'll say that again, 90% automated by 2025. Now that may seem like a lot, but it's very achievable. But it's only achievable if we start now and start to automate some of the high volume activities, some of the high volume tasks, some of the very repeatable tasks. As Charlie mentioned, a lot of the calls that come into a desk, into an analyst or a representative are the same questions, the same request over and over and over again. And a chatbot is a great example of a way that we can automate that. So never underestimate the value of automation, even small investments now, and build a plan for the next 5 years. All right, the next thing we want to look at is, Charlie, if we could go to the next one, is AI. I call this the brother or the sister of automation. They're related, they're not the same. Certainly AI is assisting automation goals, but the same comment applies as we made earlier with automation, and that is AI has gotten a lot better. I remember the day when we got excited about AI. It wasn't that long ago, but the technology really wasn't up to the challenge. Well, that has changed now, and realize that bots are one good example. We'd call bots an example of the current generation of AI, and realize that any intelligent technology could fall into this broad category, and we're going to advance remarkably. AI is on a remarkable acceleration curve for how quickly it's getting better. Conversational AI is a new paradigm where you can have a conversation with an intelligent element. We do that, for example, with some of the technologies I'm going to mention a little bit later that Bright Pattern provides. There are other vendors out there that are really investing in this, and I want to use this example because I use this example with friends of mine, that Alexa and Siri are doing a really good job of training us to have a conversation with an intelligent element, with AI. We don't realize that because they just sort of moved into our day-to-day life, but that's exactly what's happening. And you need to realize we've become comfortable with Alexa and Siri and how we live our life, kind of our personal life, our life outside of work. But make no mistake, the next generation of conversational AI is going to be focused on business. And you're going to be able to have a context-specific discussion with an AI element, an intelligent element, and that is going to be a conversation, and you're going to be able to ask questions. You're going to be able to ask them to do things for you. And again, that's going to begin to reshape how we work in business every day. We're not there today, but don't think for a minute, based on a movie you just saw, that that's 25 years away. That is not 25 years away. Conversational AI will start to reshape how we work every day in our jobs within just a few years. And for those naysayers or those people who think that's crazy, again, realize that Watson and Siri and Alexa and others have already started to train these awkward and slow learning humans on how to have a great conversation with AI. And a great place to start, Charlie mentioned this, is with bots. They're really successful with deflection. They can take some of the heavy lifting off of agents and deflect some of the calls from the service desk. Okay. So the next thing we want to look at is communication. Now, communication is really natural to ESM. It was not always the strength of ITSM. You know, IT people, if you want to make an IT analyst panic, tell them they have to go talk to somebody. That's not always true, of course, and it's a joke that we like to use. But communication's got to improve in ITSM and in ESM. And it helps for us to address those areas together because they have natural synergies, but they are not the same. You can't just say, oh, ESM, oh, that's just ITSM for HR. That is not the case. ESM has some fundamentally different principles and goals. But one thing we have to do for ESM, and one thing that ITSM can learn from and how ESM operates, is communicating better, being more proactive, multi-channel. For example, chat. A lot of teams today, a lot of service management teams today are not yet using chat, for example. A chat can be very, very productive. We know that we can handle 3 or 4 chat-based interactions versus 1 interaction when we're talking on the phone. A lot of teams are using, COVID has accelerated this, and a lot of teams, I'm working with an organization that I just spoke with a couple of days ago, and they're using chat and Microsoft Teams to kind of collaborate amongst the team when they're trying to provide a service. And that's proven that's not customer facing, it's within the team, but it's still very, very productive. And soon it will be with customers. These communication models help customers feel more comfortable. And I'll give you an example. One of the greatest frustrations with service delivery is a user or a customer not knowing what's going on, simply not knowing what the status is of the request or of an incident, for example. Just informing users or customers, even employees, on what's happening, what the status is, makes a huge difference. And people can just relax. They know what to expect next. They know what the timeline is. And so much like with automation, we could just start simple with communication, and it makes a huge difference. The next thing we want to look at is self-service. Charlie touched on this as well, is self-service is a very natural model. And I say here, I make the comment, it's easy to love. It's easy to love when you do it well. It could be easy to hate when you don't do it well, but we are doing it more consistently and doing it well. And the great thing about self-service is it puts people in charge. We allow users or customers or employees to kind of control the process. It's available around the clock. That is a really important thing because that's more and more the lifestyle that we're living, is doing everything in our personal lives and everything at work around the clock whenever it needs to be done. And again, this crazy world that we live in 2020, that's been accelerated, and we have in the remote workforce our lives outside of our jobs, and our jobs have been smashed together. And everything, we're just doing what we need to do each day. Here's the list of stuff I need to do in my personal life or my home, and here's the list of stuff I need to do for my job, and I'll just get it all done. And it's not that big a deal. And we have a lot more flexibility because when we're in the office, we're a little more limited. We can't stop by the grocery store when we're sitting in the office. We can't drop off dry cleaning when we're sitting in the office. We can't watch a baseball game. Well, maybe that's a bad example, but anyway, you get the idea. And it's perfect for mobility. And so what I would counsel people is that whatever your ESM plan is, or your ITSM plan, for those that are a little more IT focused, is that you've got to include self-service. Self-service has to be part of that model. And don't think of it too literally, because the model of self-service is evolving. This is about giving people the opportunity to learn and to serve themselves in whatever it is that they're trying to do. Okay, on the next one, we are going to take a look at the lifestyle. And this might be something we haven't paid enough attention to, but our lifestyle is changing. In fact, our lifestyle just leapt forward 5 years or 10 years in the last 9 months because of working remotely and because of COVID. So the remote workforce is a reality now. A high percentage of the workforce is working remotely. And in fact, people have gotten pretty comfortable with it. People have gotten pretty productive. We were panicking in March or April, and now people generally feel like they made a few adjustments, and it's working out pretty well, as a matter of fact. And this is our new reality. This is probably going to continue into 2021. And some businesses, some household names have already made the decision that they're never bringing people back into the office. And so this is a lifestyle. And ESM is a natural for this lifestyle because it's very empowering. Again, back to this model of work or play anywhere, anytime, any way you want to. That is the simple formula for how we're going to be living in 2021, 2022. We get our work done. We feel very productive. We feel very independent. We get our home stuff done. We get our family stuff done. And we have a productive day, and everything is checked off our list at the end of the day. And that was problematic for us before. And I think companies, I talked to a CIO last week, and they said they were frankly very surprised, were their words, at how productive the IT organization is being and working remotely for the first time ever. And we got to be, the last comment I want to make here is we got to pay attention to mental health. Mental health has been ignored. It's been on the back burner for far too long. It's got to become a priority because we have people that are feeling a lot of stress. It's a stressful world. And we've got to make sure that people are happy and they're healthy. Charlie showed the quote from CEO of Southwest Airlines. It's amazing when you put your employees in a position to be happy, all kinds of good things happen, including mental health goes way up. Customers are happy, shareholders are happy, and the business does well. Okay. The final point I want to make again is, and continuing to dovetail into some of what Charlie said, is platforms are important because platforms scale. Platforms are agile. So always think about building a platform that contemplates what happens if we have growth. What happens if we have to externalize this? Was a great example Charlie used. What happens if? What happens if? Ask ourselves that question and build everything to survive the test of time, to be ready for change, to be ready for shifts in the business. And it's really important that whatever technology you're investing in, it can be compatible with your existing applications, your existing platforms, and then you're going to find a much longer productive life cycle for your applications and for your technology. And when what if does happen, you're ready for it. And it doesn't cause chaos, which is how we've lived our life for the last 15 years. We don't want to do that anymore. Okay, so I want to just highlight one success story, and that is Randstad, a really interesting organization, the world's second largest. If we can go to the next slide, they're the second largest staffing and HR management organization. They really had the vision to recognize that automation was important. They've made an investment in automation. They've used AI voice biometrics, which can recognize your voice signature and take actions based on that, kind of the beginning of that conversational AI that we talked about. They're leveraging bots, and they've just had a tremendous success in leveraging this technology and getting some great benefits. So these were their objectives, and they were able to achieve these objectives. And on the next slide, we highlight some of the benefits, including significant call deflection. Charlie mentioned that in his discussion. 60, 70, 80% is very achievable with these technologies, with bots and with conversational AI and with voice biometrics. Randstad moved their solutions into the cloud, which was a natural for supporting the remote workforce. And they were able to achieve a pretty significant ROI just in a few months, whereas years has been the norm in ESM. in ITSM, they were able to get an ROI in just a few months, which is remarkable and remarkably empowering to the organization. And then finally on this, the next slide just highlights Jessica Osborne, who's a young up-and-coming leader in that organization. She makes the comments that they've delivered this automation and advanced capability. They had this exciting ROI, and it's just the beginning. They're really building an amazing foundation for their future, and it is based on these smart technologies, focusing on the principles of ESM and making an aggressive investment in automation. Okay, so I think that's all the slides we had prepared. We're going to spend a little bit of time on Q&A. We do have a few minutes here now. And the first question that came in early is for Charlie. So the question is, you made this comment on the concept of flow, and I found that very interesting. But just in my little world and what I do, how can I make adjustments in my daily work to try to maximize my flow?
Well, I think we all, certainly when we're continuously adapting to a position, I'm always looking for ways to, make sure I've got all the information I need. I mean, cheat sheets and other forms of those kinds of resources, I think are very important. But I would also start having some conversations with your management. If you don't feel that you're in a sense of flow, have that conversation. If you feel like you're constantly being pulled in multiple directions, have the conversation, and hopefully this starts to echo up through channels to your leadership, because it is so important, and it does impact your quality of work and ultimately the effectiveness of your company. And hopefully with this increasing industry emphasis on lean, on flow, on psychological safety, all of these things, employee experience, you'll have a more receptive audience, you'll have a more receptive ear with your management. There are probably even books or Forrester reports that you might be able to forward onward if you were so inclined. Ultimately, I think that from a career perspective, I would always be looking for an opportunity and position where I did have that sense of flow.
Okay, all right, excellent. Thank you, Charlie. We have another question for you here, and DevOps has gotten a lot of attention. Those are my words, by the way. The question is, and Charlie, you had it in your session. The question is, can you just say a little more about DevOps specifically and how it can help us improve service management?
Sure. So DevOps is the acceleration of the software development lifecycle. It's also the formation of a culture of trust. And it is an organizational operating model change that focuses more on ongoing product teams and less on project teams. And in all of these senses, it's not incompatible with service management. Now, traditional ITIL came from a world where projects were king. Everybody assumed that there was a project. ITIL in its earlier version, certainly through version 3 and version 2011, assumed that there was a portfolio of projects that was being designed and built and then transitioned over to service operations. And where DevOps came in and started to tweak that, it says, no, you're never done. We rule out, or we do not agree that we have a defined project and then the project team scatters to the four corners of the earth after throwing this thing over the wall to operations, who is then stuck with it until the next project team is founded, or formulated, some months or perhaps years later. No, IT services are ongoing things that need continuous care and feeding and upgrade by qualified developers, and this never stops. And ITIL gets this now with ITIL v4. They certainly did a lot of rewriting of ITIL itself. And so the older idea is, fading into history. and everybody's understanding that complex digital systems are ongoing services. And in that sense, ITIL was not wrong. Services are services. They're ongoing. You expect them to be there. And they should always be on, and we care about the outcome of the service. We care that the service is helping the customer achieve a desired outcome. That's always where ITIL was at its strongest. Not in all of its discussion of processes. ITIL got a lot wrong there, but the whole industry was in a learning phase. But the prioritization of the service outcome, the service objective, over all of the technical nuts and bolts that were required for the service, that was a concrete contribution of ITIL that can still be built upon in this day and age of increased rapidness of delivery and increased collaboration between dev and ops.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think we tend to think that it's sort of an all or nothing with some of these frameworks or some of these models. We haven't talked about Agile, but Agile is another one. I
Yep.
know that Charlie, you and I have discussed. And so between Flow and DevOps and Agile, it doesn't have to be wholesale change or take it all on board. There can be specific ideas or specific concepts or strategies that we can borrow to meet
Yes.
the need of a particular time or challenge.
Yep, absolutely. So much of it is about the realization that research and development requires experimentation. And that's what Agile got right. The parts of ITIL that make me cringe are when there is an assumption that we need to analyze some work product like a design, a service package, and there needs to be, rigor in, analyzing. Well, the trouble is you never completely rule out all the uncertainties. And if you've got the bigger the batch, the bigger the design, the more likely you inevitably are going to overlook something. So this is why we want small batch sizes and fast feedback, because that is actually the correct way to learn, not just, engage in endless and increasing cycles of review upon review upon review before we actually launch the thing. No, launch a minimum viable version of the thing and then course correct from there. There is a very strong emerging industry consensus on this. Now, there are some caveats with, things like complex embedded systems, but that's I think that's out of scope for the discussion we can get in here today.
Well, we already covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we
and
sure
thank
did.
you. Thank you, Charlie. And I see we're coming up on the top of the hour. And I just wanted to thank those that submitted the questions. I have answered a couple while we were talking. There are some items in the chat I'll try to get to in the few minutes following us dropping off the video and the audio. But I hope you enjoyed the program today, everybody. I hope you heard a few interesting ideas that you can put into work, put to use in your daily job, which is why we all like to listen to these things, maybe steal a gem out of idea and help us do our job a little bit better. Remember to watch for our email with the recording and our contact information. You can contact us directly if you have any further questions or if you want more information. We always love to hear from you. We love to talk about this stuff. And I wanted to give a final thanks to Charlie Betz and Forrester for being on the event with us today and really appreciate the insight. So that's going to conclude our program for today. And everybody stay safe and goodbye for now.
Thank you.